Okay then, Cam. Well, thank you so much and welcome to Cinema, Life and Everything. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so on this slightly grey day, but definitely not as grey as it was at the weekend.
Yeah.
You're doing good and everything today, yeah?
Yeah, doing great today. Just had quite a relaxed morning, not too bad. So just prepped and ready to go.
Brilliant. That's what I like to hear. Well, just to start off with, would you like just to tell the listeners and indeed the viewers on YouTube a little bit about yourself, and we can crack on with your film choices?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name's Kamara, from the Midlands, from Wolverhampton, you know.
Nice.
In the film industry, mainly with the martial arts side of things. I do like doing the weapons and firearm stuff as well, and I'm transitioning slowly towards stunts, but I do enjoy the acting stuff as well. So, background actually, I used to be a dancer.
Nice.
Still am a dancer, but I'm just not professionally following it anymore. But yeah, that was my thing for the longest time, and yeah, stopped doing that due to injury. But you know, things happen in life. Got back into condition, so still dance now. But main thing is the martial arts and the film industry. So that is me.
What martial arts are you currently studying at the moment, and what have you studied? I'm interested. I didn't actually ask that. Yeah.
So Lao Gar Kung Fu was my first and my baby. I'll be honest. That is like, you know, like the Kung Fu that was influenced a lot. You'll find by my film choices and stuff. So yeah, and I think with my background in my family as well, my uncles growing up, they both studied Lao Gar as well, which yeah, it's almost like a family thing now. So yeah, I kind of took on that mantle. And but I've learned other things as well along the way. So I've done a bit of like Shotokan karate. I've done a bit of BJJ as well, like learning just the groundwork, because I know it's important to have that as well these days. So that's something that I'm trying to get more into now. So that's the more recent thing that I'm trying to get into. So yeah.
I've got to be honest, I know a little bit about Kung Fu, but I'm probably not as well versed as I should be. I did Wado-Ryu and Shotokan karate myself. This is just a question off the top of my head. How is it with the distancing? Because I've always found with Kung Fu, it's very, very good for grappling because you've got the hand trapping and the in-close punching. And karate was very much about samurai or taking samurai off horseback. So it's all very long distancing because they're trying to avoid the sword all the time, like the unarmed fighters. So what did you find the difference in ranges? Is there a lot of transition in between Kung Fu and karate, or is it a very different sort of stance?
I say because like Lao Gar, it's classed as, I guess, a hard style because you got like soft and hard kung fu. So you got your Tai Chi, soft and that. Like Lao Gar is quite derived from like Hungar, and it has like certain elements of Shaolin. So you've got some of their styles, but the animal styles like Tiger Claw and like Phoenix Eye, just little things like that. So I think utilizing when it's up close, it's more of the fists and everything. But
Yes.
the way they kind of, I guess, make that distance known is like with the kicks. So with Kung Fu, kicks are quite low down the body. It's like lower part. But with a Lao Ga, you do have kicks, I guess, to the waist or kind of like trapping kicks as well. So that kind of determines the distance of, you know, if your opponent is longer than you or taller than you, you've got that. You can work that out. But then if you need to get in close, you've got those fast strikes to get in closer and do what you need to do on the inside, pretty much.
Because my experience of Kung Fu was that you have the arts that are just based completely, let's take someone out quickly, which is like a sort of Krav Maga sort of thing. But then you also have the classical style, so there's a bit more of a flourish to everything. They've made it quite beautiful so it can get passed down from generation to generation, and you develop the style of it and then you sort of make it your own. I always found Kung Fu meshed those two things together quite well, in a sense that you had the beauty to it, but at the same time the low kicks to the knee, the oblique kicks and stuff like that, all very, very effective in real life. There was no room for misinterpretation with that stuff.
Yeah, because I think there was a couple of times like with my training, my seafood back in the day, and we'd learn techniques and stuff, and you know, you're scratching your head, you'll be thinking, what could this technique actually be used for in a real life situation? And he'll be like, okay, I'll show you. And then just little things like punches with like, you know, you knock the one knuckle, and you're okay, you know, it's not as stable as a full fist, whatever. But then just getting hit with that minute like surface area, when you get hit with it, just the pain, like internally you feel it, And yeah, that was, you learn like little things like that, like hitting in certain areas with those little key points and just implementing things like that. I think I don't know, it made me appreciate Kung Fu and I guess the magic of it almost, because people just kind of like the whole mystical side of it. And, you know, you see all this stuff on like Kung Fu films and people flying about or doing like crazy things, people getting taken out across. But then it's like, yeah, it's fabricated and made to look more amazing on screen. But in real life, in real terms, if you did those moves, it wouldn't be as, you know, as showy, but the impact of those moves is just as powerful. Like the power in those little minute spaces and moments is like amazing. So that's what I appreciate about it personally.
And you've absolutely transitioned yourself perfectly there. So talking about the magic of Kung Fu, hey, there we go. Could you please? Oh, it's terrible. I should ban myself. Could you give us your 3 film choices today? Because these are, well, one is technically, when you said this to me, I couldn't really say it's sort of a trilogy and they'll fit together nicely as well. So you can't really pick just one. So could you give me your 3, in a sort of way, 5 films?
I mean, to be fair, of that trilogy, I've managed to break it down, and I have picked my favorite ones.
Go on
away as well.
Oh, okay then.
So my first film, and it was mainly because it was my introduction to martial arts and kung fu in general. My uncle showed me this film when I think I was like 9 years old at the time, and you know, I'd watched a few like adult films, shouldn't have watched 15 certificate films, and I was like, oh, okay, this is, you know, I watched Alien, Predator, but then I think it was Drunken Master.
Yes.
Jackie Chan, and that was, I don't know, like I think I watched that and the whole training montage. That was, we'll go into that in a bit, but that was the one that really caught me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So that's my first film, Drunken Master. It's at 1978, I think that was.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how old it was actually.
So yeah, we've got that. What's the one now? So The Matrix. Remember, I said it's a trilogy. Like it's amazing. Like the whole, when it first came out, it changed genres and it brought something new visually and everything to cinema. But for me personally, I know it's controversial, but I prefer the second one, The Matrix Reloaded. Mainly because, again, with the martial arts influence on that, there was a lot of artists and that were used in that. And, you know, the whole idea of The Matrix, like, I know we saw Keanu use Kung Fu in the first one, but the second one really kind of showed the different styles, the weapons, and like the visual effects that were used. So yeah, the second one for me, Matrix Reloaded, and finally the third film was The Last Samurai.
Yes, incredible. Well done. Well remembered.
Yeah, that's the one that like people are just like, what, really? And I was like, yeah, like when I break it down, it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense now.
Okay, well, I'm really excited. So 3 absolute classics. I love the fact both me and you have actually spoke about the Matrix, and we still refer to it as a trilogy. Completely forgetting there is a Resurrections out there, but there's not really very much martial arts in that one. They didn't get Wu Ping back, which was a real shame. So it's got its moments, but yeah, it's a tricky one to put in with the other 3. To be quite honest, it felt like it had ended the tale with the third one for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fourth one. It was interesting. It was, I guess, it had its own trajectory that it was going, but in terms of, I guess, what the Matrix encompassed, like the soul of it, I felt like that was slightly missing. And like I said, because Wu Ping wasn't in it, and other elements that weren't there. I mean, like Lawrence Fishburne wasn't in it, and I don't know if those little elements kind of changed it a little bit, but it was. I mean, if kids or younger generation hadn't watched any of the Matrix films and went in at that, they'll probably be like, "Oh, this is really cool." But then when you've kind of experienced from '99 to whenever it was 2006, the original trilogy, like that was just the culmination of cinema. It was beautiful. Like visually, VFX were a new thing, kind of thing back then. So even though it may not have aged as well now, it's still great to see it personally. I'm just like, yeah, I love it.
I want to get talking about it, like, but for the first one, even the scene where Carrie-Anne Moss talks about, you know, you can't die because I love you, and then he stops the bullets. I mean, it's iconic. I don't care if the effects are a little bit dropped down now. It's still, all 3 films have parts in there where they're just breathtaking, and the heart and the emotion is there. So I'm completely with you on him. Okay, so where should we start? Which one should we start with?
I'll start with a Drunken Master because I feel like you've got some input on that as well. I'm interested.
Yeah. So I can already, from what you said, you watched it with your, was it grandfather? Sorry, yeah.
My uncle.
So yeah, uncle. So was it? So it's obviously got a real good childhood link there, which I love as well. So what made that one stand out to you? Why were you just like, whoa?
I don't know what it was, 'cause I think back in the day, I mean, you had films out. I think you had like your Nightmare on Elm Street, you had Predator, Aliens, like kind of films. And I was like, okay, like I was young watching these films, and I was like, oh, I shouldn't be watching these, but this is amazing. And it was like, I know, just something like naughty about watching those kind of films. But then when I watched when I watched Drunken Master, it was weird because I mean, those kind of films, I guess the old style films, I used to like watching the Carry On films, so that was something else that kind of influenced it. But then you had like characters like Mega Sue, and like you had that comedic side to it. But
Yeah,
then when it did get serious, like the training montage, is like there was no cuts, and you could see like the training he was doing, and you could almost physically see the transformation of Jackie Chan within that film. And for me, that's something I'd never seen before. So I was a bit like, okay, this is crazy. And it's like I had my uncles like next to me talking about it and talking about kung fu and doing all this in the background. And I was like, okay, I know you like do it. And I was like, so wait, is this what you like learn in class? And they're like, pretty much. So I was like, okay, this is this is what I really like this.
yeah. It was so I was happy as well because when I watched it again the other day, I managed, because back in the day all kung fu films were dubbed, which is okay, but okay, now you must attack my master, and it's that weird sort of like emotionless voice. But when I got to watch it the other day with subtitles, and you really hear Jackie Chan screaming and stuff, it's like, oh, okay, this adds another element to it. But the takes, you've mentioned that already. I mean, how blown away by you by that? It's like I remember they were good, but that's actually what cinema's getting back to now, and that's in 78. Like the unending take, the one camera, they're angling everything so you're not getting any misses. Like everything some of it looks pretty full on actually. I was like like completely enraptured from beginning to end, and that physical comedy in a style of a Buster Keaton or a Harold Lloyd, like you said, the Carry On films as well. Funny, but at the same time, all those techniques are like full on. They're not playing around.
And that's the thing as well. Like back then, there was. I mean, I know they had like certain techniques they'd use in that, but they didn't really have stunt people back then. It was if you were fighting in that film. That choreography that you learned, it was done, and that was the take. And I doubt. I know. I don't know personally how they did it back then, but I mean, I doubt they did like 20 plus takes for a scene. They probably just fired it out. If you got hit, you got hit, kind of thing, and you would keep going. And yeah, it was just the whole, like I said, the whole Buster Keaton thing. And obviously, I think Jackie Chan's like, because I've read his book and that, he said he's
Yeah,
influenced by Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, people like that. So it's kind of, you could see a lot of what influenced him within that film as well. And then with his master Beggar Sue and the comedy of that with the drunken style and the crack fists, and yeah, it was the whole. I think the training montage for me is the whole thing with the little teacups, and he had
yes.
to, inverted sit ups and like fill the thing, come back down and do that, and it's just those little physical things. I was like, wait, is that even possible for someone to do? But now that you'd have like a cut and someone doing it maybe, but this was like full on him doing it, and it was just like, okay, this is not just an actor; he's an actual real martial artist.
And I remember that back in the day as well, when I read I Am Jackie Chan, an awesome autobiography. Everyone should read it who's interested in film. And he mentioned that Bruce Lee had sort of cornered the market in the serious fighting style. So he said, well, I will not try and be another Bruce Lee. I'm going to be my own person and add the comedy in. But I think it's only recently watching him again, and even especially watching this the other day. He's not playing around. Like he's in incredible physical shape. Like his acrobatics, his martial arts are all on point. And as you said as well, there's a few bits in that when I'm looking at it, and especially in the final fight when the guy's stamping down on him, trying to get stamped on his head, and I'm like, he's not pulling that. That is coming for his head. You know what I mean? The eye is on the target, and I'm like, and you are like watching Jackie Chan's the outtakes at the end. If you realise a few times, yeah, he didn't get out of the way.
But those hits were real, some of them, and you're just like, oh.
It's like he still smiles about it all, but I think he's had some serious injuries going on and stuff as well, right? It's like some serious business.
Yeah,
But
I think like, I'm sorry about that.
No, please do.
Like you said, when you've read his book as well, like he says, he's pretty much broke every bone in his body, pretty much. And I think, is it Armor of God? Is one of the films where when he fell out of a tree and like fractured his skull, just stuff like that. He could have had someone do it for him. He could have had like other things and safety things in place, like even police story, but he just doesn't. And he goes full hog with everything he does. And I think he was one of my biggest influences anyway for film and getting into this kind of thing. So just seeing how he kind of visualizes things and puts things together, and now he's a stunt coordinator and everything, and he's got his own school and everything. It's all those years of hard work of doing what he did back then. It's massively paid off.
Do you think as well, does it inspire you in terms of his legacy because he has done it all? Like he's never, even though it's sort of like we are as actors and martial artists on screen, you are giving the illusion of violence or the illusion of portraying certain emotions. There is no hiding behind the fact that he's really had to do the training to learn all this, and he really is doing the fighting. All right, they're not fighting to kill, but he has got all the techniques available to him, so he's really got that legacy of authenticity behind him as well. Would you feel that is a big influence for you as well?
Oh, massively, massively. I mean, that's the thing, because when I was younger, I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, I kind of stopped with kung fu. I didn't really stray from it because I guess it was like a traditional thing back in the day. It's like, you pick one and that's your style kind of thing. But then it's just as you go on, like, people like Bruce Lee that have kind of branched out, learned different things to kind of get a better understanding of the martial arts world in general, not just just as a kung fu practitioner or anything like that. And it's like Jackie Chan as well, like he's done like boxing, other things as well. So to see how they kind of implemented like styles from like the East and the West and doing different things as well, I think that does inspire me, because it's like, it's showing that you don't have to be like a one-trick pony. Like you can have like your foundation, but then build on it, and then you can take it anywhere else after that. So yeah.
I'll tell you something with the dancing as well, like Bruce Lee, ballroom dancer, loads of boxers now studying dance before they go into boxing, just because of about footwork. And it's so interesting how it doesn't even have to be martial arts, how just different movement, different forms of human expression, how they really connect with each other in very strange ways that you don't really pick up at first. But for me, even with like say when I started looking at some kung fu and coming from a very grappling background, but then suddenly realizing the hand trapping stuff, I'm like, that's exactly the same as wrestling with arm drags and wrist takes. And I was like, but it sort of goes to a point and then they go, oh no, but this stops here. Whereas it's actually, no, you just open your hands and it becomes something else. So making those connections, do you enjoy doing all that as well?
Oh, I love it. Like those little things, like when you learn one thing, do a technique in one style, then you try something else, and you're like, hang on, this seems very familiar right to me right now. And it's just like
Yeah.
it's a case of just an open hand, or instead of a forward fist, it's a back fist, just little things, but then the strikes, they still fall in the same way, and it's just a little tweak, and it's a different style almost. So yeah.
And essentially that's what I think, that's why Jackie Chan holds such a big place in my heart as well. I would love to know if it's the same for you, that he managed to go, okay, I've got all this kung fu, I've got all these skills, but I had the comedy in, I had the physical drama, but also as well not make it too, and in a way it almost gives a release valve to the audience a little bit, because you have the bit with the drinking, so he's all a bit drunk and comedic and a bit wobbly all over the shop, but then there's no faking the violence. But for people who might not be into such like full-on striking violence, you've got the more comedic sort of like, oh, but he's falling about, and it's a little bit slapstick, a little bit cartoonish as well.
No, definitely. That is, I think, yeah, he just, yeah, like you said, he just holds like a dear place in my heart. What he does is just amazing, and I don't think it'll ever be replicated again. I know everyone's got their own like
Yeah.
version of what he does, but I mean, like there's only one Bruce Lee. For me, there's only one Jackie Chan as well. So
I think he's sewn it up so well that even if someone did come along and try to recreate that style, he is the originator. So it would always go, oh, it's like him saying, okay, yeah, I took ideas from Buster Keaton. There's only one Buster Keaton. There will only be one Jackie Chan. It's similar. If anyone ever stood there and, wow, it's like, You're doing Bruce Lee. You're paying homage there straight away. And as we can see, exactly. And as I showed you, I've completely forgotten the name of the boxer now, but there's actually a boxer, Emmanuel something. I'm desperately trying to remember his second name, but he had a Drunk Master style in boxing, and it was like how that's actually played into real martial arts, but actually into like a actual combat arena as well. It's absolutely incredible.
Alistair Emmanuel, something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. So yeah, look him up. It's just the way because sort of like when you go down a YouTube rabbit hole, like I want to do before doing one of these things, and I was watching his wobbly leg boxing style, then put Drunken Master back on. I was like, oh my God, I'd love to have a chat to him. I bet you that's one of his favorite films as well.
That would be an interesting conversation. And I didn't realize he fought Floyd Mayweather.
Yes.
Realized, and that was one of his Mayweather's hardest fights apparently. So you can see that unpredictable drunken style is almost. It's you can use it in different sports, but it's still as unpredictable regardless of what pass you use it in. So yeah, it's an effective style.
Do you take a message from the Drunken Master at all, like being an artist of no art, or developing your own form, or getting really loose before you're having a fight? Is there a sort of like thing you take from that film at all? Like when you watched it, did a message really resonate with you?
I think for me personally, because I'm still guilty of it now sometimes. But when you're training or sparring, or if you do something, or you're doing a bit of choreo, and you mess up a little bit, and you're like, okay. But then it's that with drunken style, it's like you can mess up a little bit, but it's almost like because you have that free flowing style. If you just transition it into something else, or take a misstep in a different direction, you can almost change the direction of what you're doing. It's not a mistake then. It's kind of you're just redirecting what you were doing almost. So it's kind of like you don't need to be perfect in life, whatever you're doing. Just take another direction, you'll still get there. But it's going to happen anyway.
That's a hell of a message. That really reminds me of Bruce Lee's "Be Like Water" as well. Just a different way of saying it. You can just flow through life, and there are no real any mistakes. You like you say, it's true to you, and that's the most important thing. It's a hell of a message to take from a film. Well done. So, would you like to go on to the next film at all? Would we have a chat about another one now? What would you like to go on to next?
Oh, what should we do next? Yeah, let's go for the Matrix Reloaded, because I know that's always a bit like the second one.
I think the anticipation for it was so much, and because the first one was so genre breaking, but the Wachowskis really wanted to put the message in with all the martial arts. So I think it threw a bit people how much talking. I know the architect is always going to be a bone of contention with loads of people, but I loved it. I personally loved it as well. So So yeah, go on, please. So did you go to see this in the cinema? Was this like a big event movie for you? Right. Okay. Let's hear about it then.
Because this one came out in 2003.
Oh God!
I was 14 at the time. I wasn't old enough to go see it in cinemas, but I still went to see it in cinema. I got in. Me and my friend did it. I had to do the whole. I was born a year before. I told them age, but yeah. But yeah, I saw it in cinemas, and I was just taken aback, because I think that was one of the first 50 certificate films I'd seen in the cinema, and then it was just the idea of a film with pretty much a solid continuation from the first, because there's not many films that have that kind of first one's done and then sequel is boom right from that. So that was a new kind of thing for me anyway, personally. And then just another development of the characters, Neo kind of realizes the one, and his development within what's it called? Oh, what's the world called now?
Not Zion. Yeah, Zion.
Is it Zion? Zion, yeah. So Zion, and it's kind of like how he's integrated into, I guess, reality, the real world, and how they're talking about the machines. It was interesting for me because if I put all three of them together, the first one's more like in the computer world, like not reality. The second one, balance of man and machine, and then the third one's kind of like complete reality, the war with the machines and that. So I feel like the second one is almost. It's almost like the yin yang. It's like the balance of you've got the machine and you've got the man, and it's kind of it comes together at a certain point. And yeah, that's for me the second one. That's why it kind of lands so dear to me out of all three of them.
I've got to be honest. My mind, when we talk about them, I cannot separate them now, because somewhere on this shelf behind me, I got a fan edit, and they edited all 3 films together, and the anime Enter the Matrix, all stuck together, all in a timeline. And I just, when I watch it, I just, it's like a 7-hour jobby. I'm like, right, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna watch it. There's no end to this Matrix. So, but yeah, from I was really impressed with the second one, because Neo had basically become Superman or godlike. And how do you get drama back into someone that you basically can't defeat? How do you make a threat again? This is something that Marvel films have a lot of trouble with. How do you make the villain a real threat? I think The Matrix did it absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. Because I think as well with the second one, like I said, because he was such an indomitable character in it, and the agents, they were kind of not scared of him, but they're a bit more wary of him. But then you had was it the Merovingian, and then you had the other characters involved, the Silver Twins, which they were like coded programs, but then it was just they could phase through walls and stuff. And it's like you said, that kind of added that danger element, because even though Neo couldn't be hurt, everyone around him was still vulnerable, and that's what it tapped into with him and his emotions, with obviously the Trinity, with like Lawrence Fishburne's like Morpheus, and the highway scene.
Incredible.
Oh my god.
This is when you said the second one. It's like, I don't think there's anything to apologize for. You've got Lawrence Fishburne on top of a semi with a katana. What is wrong with that? If someone had explained to me that was the only thing you're going to see for 2 hours, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good with that. I can watch this.
It's the scene in the grand hallway with all the weapons on the walls, and then the fighting up and that kind of pays homage to the older styles, like the Hong Kong cinema with the wire work, like when the fighting on the wires, like you can tell obviously the fighting with the sword, they're like jumping over, and just like that was very like a homage to that, like that what genre? Yeah, that genre of cinema. So it's just it's beautiful. So that kind of played into that. Then the different weapons he was using, you had the maces, you had the swords, and so it almost like went through different styles of like fighting, different weapons, and I think that whole scene leading into the highway scene after that was it's a beautiful part of cinema.
And it never, like, I think Keanu's longevity and the amount of weapons and like his brain, he said he's just very good at learning sequences, but his mind for remembering stuff is like on another, and how he can transition from hand to hand to weapons to guns back to like melee weapons again. It's like, what are you doing, mate? It is like, so you mentioned that earlier on about it. The second one was a lot more into the traditional and all the different types of kung fu. I think mainly because Keanu could do it because he wasn't so injured with the second and third one. So yeah, what bits really stood out to you? I mean, apart from were there any particular techniques you saw or things that he did in it where you're like, yeah, that really, really speaks to me?
It's the part where he fights is it Seraph?
Yeah.
The key maker.
Yeah.
When they're in their like old like Chinese tea house, that fight with those two is beautiful. I love it because that is very much a traditional kung fu fight between those two, and it's just like the little techniques, like I said, the locking, the sticking hands, and like the intercepting kicks, just everything in that little section. And I'm sure there's a bit of wire work used when they're on the tables and stuff as well. Just the cinematography in that, and it felt like, even though it wasn't one cut, but it felt like the way it was filmed, it was very much, the cut was very clean, and it didn't look like there was many cuts. It was just like boom, 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 all the choreography. And like you said, Keanu learned stuff like really fast, his choreo, and that was just a little perfect scene that was. And then another scene that sticks out for me as well, even though it's not massively aged well now, it's when he fights like it's like 100 or 100,000.
The swarm of Agent Smiths. Yeah.
So it's that scene. He's like he's fighting hand to hand at first, and then he gets like kicked or knocked back, and he grabs the pole out of the ground, rips it out, and he's like a little bow staff, does his stuff, and then it's just those little elements of you can use anything around you and implement it with a martial art like kung fu or something else, and it shows in everything that he does, and it plays really well in that film. So it's up there for me.
It is. I probably the music is really underrated sometimes, and I mean the soundtracks were ridiculous. The soundtracks were so good that I think they have powered many a gym workout. But the actual background music, the wow, and when like Neo does a strike that's so big it almost bends reality, and you get like the ripple effect. Yeah, it's just it's iconic, and you can. I think it came at a time. Yeah, okay, some of the effects look a little bit dated now, but it married what was at the absolute edge of capability for computers with really bringing back in what had been forgotten about fighting and how you could portray fighting on screen with these long takes, and and gunplay and stuff as well, and it mixed it all together absolutely perfectly.
No, 100%. And I think just even even though you had all those elements as well, the story on top of it was just solid as well. I just really like it. It had everything that you needed for, I guess, a quote unquote blockbuster film these days. You had like amazing story, like cinematography, like music, like character development as well, because you had like the other, even though Neo was kind of at his peak, the other characters around him were still developing, which it was nice to kind of see, because like Trinity was also still struggling with the idea. You had Morpheus was, even though Neo was the one, it was kind of like, is he going to save us still? Is this actually, is he going to save Zion? And then, if anyone hasn't seen it, spoiler alert, but towards the end when he's back in reality and he stops those machines, shuts them down, but then he like goes into a coma. And I was like, how it ended? Because I remember I saw it in the cinema and I was like, what's going on? I was like, how is he just ending like that? So it's kind of like, you realize like his powers are not just in the computer world, they're actually in reality, but then it obviously takes it out of him. So when he ended, I was just like, I could not wait for the third one after that.
I just think, like, I'm always big on subtext in films as well. You can watch all of these films, even The Matrix, and go, hey, that's cool. But if you actually, some people took it a little bit too far about living in a simulation, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But just the idea of free will, the idea of having to, like you say with Neo, he has been given this position of absolute power, but how the human comes to deal with that and how it affects him, and how he is aware that even though he has the ultimate power, all his friends around him could die, and he's going to be responsible suddenly with saving the planet. So all of these ideas are discussed, and I thought he did it wonderfully. I mean, there are some long conversational bits in it, but why can't you have a blockbuster that also makes you think and question and have a conversation after watching it as well?
Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself. That is perfect. And also, I was going to say, I completely forgot about it. With the Matrix as well, I feel like it pays homage to like Chow Yun Fat and the whole like gun fu kind of era. So it's kind of what's it? Is it hard boiled, and all sort of stuff. Like the gunplay is very similar and definitely pays homage to that. So yeah, can't forget him as well. Like that era was just amazing.
that we can go back, like, so you say, like, there's only one Jackie Chan, and if anyone ever copies Jackie Chan style, be he's copying Jackie Chan. Anytime anyone jumps through the air with two guns, it's John Woo. And especially if there's slow motion doves flying in the background and stuff as well. But the guy completely rewrote cinema, as the Matrix did. When the first time anyone saw bullet time, they were like, what was that? That's never been experienced before, you know? So like, an incredible second choice. So this is and I was interested in this one, the next one, The Last Samurai, because it's not traditional Kurosawa, but again, there's lots of elements of all of it. So, and Tom Cruise, blockbuster guy himself. So why The Last Samurai? I'm very interested in this one.
So The Last Samurai, for me personally, it was the first film that I mean, I've watched films before and had got emotional with films. That's the first film that, I'll be honest, that made me cry. Like actually made me cry tears. And it was just, I don't know, there's something in it, like, because Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack to it, and there's just some the amount of raw authenticity to it, the way it's like all plays out, and it's not a case of it's a happy film, everyone wins at the end. It's a story, and it's events that, I mean, obviously it's loosely based off real life events and stuff, but then it's, you think about all these things that happen, the turn of the revolution when guns started coming into play in war. You feel like, samurai and people that follow codes, and it was that kind of, seeing the new world come in and how the old world is going to kind of transition into it, but ultimately seeing how the brutally kind of taken out at the same time. But yeah, it's just it's a lot of there's a lot of emotional context in it. Like there's loads of quotes. I mean, Ken Watanabe, amazing in it. It's yeah, it was a wicked film, and Hiroyuki Sanada as well. I think that was the first time I ever saw him in, to be
Me
honest.
too.
So yeah,
It's when he
and
takes the
he's
bullet, he takes the bullet hole and just goes and spits out the blood and just carries on. I'm like, oh my god, he's a
but I like that as well because the character development in that, because at the beginning with the whole, once they meet and everything, and you see Tom Cruise take out, I guess, their second general. I think was it his brother-in-law or something.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And then all that happens, and it's like Hiroyuki Sanada's character is just like he's like a foreign devil. He just wants to kill him straight away. But then every time he sees him, the interaction between them two, like when he's fighting one of their sons with their Bakken,
Yeah.
and then the fighting, then like Hiroyuki absolutely like beats the hell out of him, but Tom Cruise still keeps grabbing for his like blade and that, and it's almost that resilience. And then it's the fight scene where them two actually draw in the Bakken
Yes.
fight, and then there's that recognition, and then it's like, you know what, okay, I see you as an equal now, almost like I respect you. Whereas before that, it was kind of like you're the enemy. So yeah, it's that development between them two is just like a really nice story.
Dude, as you may be aware, I have a samurai tattooed on my back, which has been on there for well over 20 years now. So when anyone recommends to me a samurai film, that's going to be one of their choices. I'm like, I've got no issues with it at all. And it's one of my favorites. The way they, like I say, they drew a lot of elements from traditional samurai films like Kurosawa, but
Oh yeah,
then they brought it into a Western world. They got the Western star in there so it would be palatable to Western audiences, but they really kept the themes of honor, sacrifice, discipline, all, but also being a poet, and the fact that Ken Watanabe's character wanted to see the perfect cherry blossom. I thought they got so many little details so right. It's gorgeous. It's just and it's beautiful. Like you say, I didn't realize Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack, but that makes a lot more sense now. It's pretty much a perfect film. It's one of my favorite films actually. So, good
and
choice.
what I like about it as well, the whole kind of, because they even implement stuff like, because I mean, everyone, like, when you think about like ninjas and everyone's like, oh, ninjas are cool,
Ninjas are
like,
in it.
cool characters. But then it's the little things that you realize that, ninjas were used to kind of, take out the last little bits of the samurai clans that were about and stuff. They were almost government agents at a certain point. So it's like to see the real reason, like, why they were used for a certain while. And it's just like, oh, okay, so like there's a reason why, like, when you hear about samurai and ninja don't really get along or whatever, it's like, oh, why is that? But then little, like that whole scene when the ninja come to the clan
Yeah.
and all that kicks off, it's like, oh, you can see why it was an issue, like, in like Japan back in the day and stuff like that. So I think, and it's interesting as well because like the ninja, like their swords and that, because I think their blades are a bit shorter, and then like ninja blades.
Yeah,
So
ninjato or something it's called. So it's so they can carry them on their back and stab upwards with them. Yeah.
I did some like research, Google, as you do. I mean, like the original like ninjato were just like broken samurai blades, so they'd like shorten them and use the like samurai's blades basically that they're defeated or taken out. So it was a bit like, okay. So that was interesting to learn that side of the history, and like, but I mean, samurai swords in general are beautiful. Like, the folded steel, the whole technique of how it's all put together. I mean, even though you got swords now that are more durable, like, stronger, whatever, there's a certain art, and like you said, there's a certain poetry in everything they do. It's very much, there's an art to everything. It's a way of life, and it's like the whole like Bushido code and everything they do. It's there's something about that. It just like hit my soul, it hit me deep. So I was a bit like, okay, this is
I think for me, I can't remember the character's name now, but the master archer who has his hair cut at one point, and they even got the whole thing about having your hair cut is a disgrace, but like Tom Cruise was like, it's more important. Also, Tom Cruise's character, it's more important that you keep your life than lose your honor. But by the
yeah.
end, he understands that honor is key. It is what defines you. What defines your legacy at the end of the day. And it's a beautiful. There's so many amazing last stands in it, but it never gets old. It's all everyone, and like you say, hits so emotionally as well. Like, oh.
And it's interesting as well. You see the transition of Tom Cruise characters, Olgren or something like that.
That's it.
But it's a character because obviously he's an alcoholic, he's drinking loads because he's, the demons of what he did to Native Americans and stuff. But then how he's been literally been nursed back to health by the wife of the person that the samurai he slayed. So it's kind of like there's that kind of thing with that. And I think it's later on when he's going back to the samurai camp and three of the guys like surround him and he hasn't got a blade or anything. And then he takes all three of them out and it's like almost he see it in his mind.
Yeah.
Standing there with two samurai swords held up high and he's just seeing everything visually. And it's almost like he's not suffering from the demons of his past anymore. It's like he's living what he does in the present now, and it's like not okay. What he's kind of like he's accepted this is his way of life almost, and I was just a bit like, oh, I was like that was powerful.
Cam, I completely forgot about that scene as well. And do you know what we were talking about? Dance. I've done a little bit of dance, like Japanese interpretive dance, and also martial arts as well. And when you have certain like fights or techniques, you see them playing out before you do them. And do you get that from it? Like it encapsulates it really well. He knew how this fight was gonna go even before he did it, because he was like you say, he got into that state of oneness. He'd become a samurai rather than just being haunted by his past.
Yeah, so yeah, that was like a really interesting take. I watched it again this weekend. Like, just I was a bit like, no, let me watch it again, and yeah, still brought me to tears.
Yeah. For sorry, spoilers, anyone, but you could always pause this podcast now and go and see it. I'm just going to mention it quickly. I don't know how you feel about this, but if I feel like I'm being forced to feel a certain emotion, if the music's building in a certain way and there's close-ups on certain people's faces, I'm just like, oh God, okay, you're trying to make me cry. But Hans Zimmer's, now that I found out is his soundtrack, it makes sense to me. And the final ride on the machine guns, and for me, it was almost it's giving me goosebumps again. The years of discipline and their order and honor against this new age. And this was it. They have to, and you want them to make it because the soldiers aren't as well disciplined as they should be, and the music builds, and you're like, oh, make it, please make it. And
the music, you hear the horses, and it's that slow motion. Then it's just that dead silence, and you just hear the and it's just like, oh, it's just that part is just, and yeah, you just see them, obviously the horses going down and everything, and it's amazing because you still see them going forwards, even though some of them are taking so many bullets. You literally just see them still, like, what I found interesting is that a lot of them didn't let go of the blades. But I'm not sure if that's a samurai thing, but they would not let go of the blade. So when they fell, they would still have the blade in the hand. Some of them, like, propped up on it, and it was just a really iconic scene. Just the visuals of it, the music, and everything about it was, it was a lot of goosebumps in that.
It's the do you know what? I don't think I've seen many samurai films where they don't die at the end. There's that. It's almost, there's a link to a Viking sort of thing there as well, like the death in combat, like a samurai. When you become that, it's your duty. And I think if you were ever disarmed, that's a huge dishonor as well, because it's your soul is enshrined in the sword and stuff as well. So to be disarmed is a grave dishonor. It's something they can't be going with either. So I mean, I think you've summed it up perfectly as well, from just the beauty in it, like even the armor. Like, I'm always big on films that have got their details right, and just it even like the slow motion fights at the beginning and stuff as well. I could see where they'd got the references from, but they'd updated it and made it a complete film itself. So, and Tom Cruise in all of the interviews, he was very quick to say where the references were. So I'm like, brilliant. They really did a good job with that one as well.
Yeah, I generally feel like, for me personally, that was peak Tom Cruise. I mean, I love his like Mission Impossible films and everything, the action set piece and that, but I feel like this one really, like, it looked like it made him dig deep emotionally, at getting into the character and almost understanding the culture more. Because when he's in his roles, he likes to do everything 100,000,000%. So
he's intense.
So I can imagine he really kind of got into this role because the emotion that was in the scenes and that is seen very like real and raw, even down to the scene where the wife of the samurai he kills like derobes him and starts putting the armor on him, just like the emotion in that scene, it's just, you know, it's getting the robes on and everything. It's like that honor of finally becoming a samurai. And it's just, yeah, when you see him walk out in like the red armor and that, and all the other samurai standing there, and it's just Hiroyuki Snyder like walks up to him and he's just like taps him on the armor, make sure it fits properly, and he's like, and just walks off. I was like, oh, I was like, yes.
It gets all the emotional beats perfectly. Well, that was actually when Tom Cruise, he went from The Last Samurai straight onto another film called Collateral with Jamie Foxx. And I do believe, yeah, I completely agree with you. Those two, that was for me a perfect meshing of movie star Tom Cruise with being able to hit the emotional beats, and just like, he can go, like, in terms of his acting, he can really go. And in that, like you say, the character arc from a drunk haunted by the demons of his past to regaining his honor and finding a reason for living again in the hands of his enemy is just, and it's a message that comes to you, and they don't have to beat you over the head with it as well. And it's an absolute stunning film. So thank you so much for letting me watch that one again as well. So I just wanted to ask, is there anything sort of that you've seen recently or coming up that you're interested in at all, or has sort of like piqued your interest a little bit?
In terms of cinematography and like visuals, or like fighting at the moment, I'd say, I mean, honorable mention, like Gareth Evans, the guy that did The Raid.
Yes,
like the Raid, you know, peak, and the series that he's doing at the moment, Gangs of London. That's really, you can tell he's encapsulated that style and brought it to commercial TV almost, because a lot of people, like, you know, if they're not really into martial arts films, or, you know, martial arts in general, they might not kind of encountered that sort of, I guess, level of visceral like action and violence. But the way he's brought it into like a gang related like drama, TV drama, and so I've heard a lot of people speak about it, and they're just like, oh my god, have you seen like this? Have you seen how these fights happen, and like how it looks so real? But then it's like, it's something that's been done, but it's never been done in such a commercialized way. Like, you know, it's on Sky One, and, you know, I watched it with my family. I did the first season, and it was great. So it was just like, they were just like loving it, and it's nice to see more people talking about these sort of things now, and the different cinematography and different levels of action. So that's, for me at the moment, that's one of the things that I love watching. So I can't wait for the next season to come out. But yeah.
No, I mean, I've watched the first season on DVD, and because as you can hear from my subtle accent, I live in Lincoln now, but I was brought up in East London. So when I saw about this Gangs of London, I was like, oh, this looks good. But then when the fights kicked off, I was completely unprepared for it, but loved it, because they're so, like, just like you say, visceral, and the long takes and stuff. Do you have, I mean, we've gone from like the Jackie Chan style, which are like unbelievable one camera, which seems about a single cut to it, and they're probably trying to kill each other, all the way through to, we went to like the Jason Bourne, very jumpy, almost like a documentary, quick cut, quick editing style. Do you feel like it's going back towards like the John Wicks now and stuff like that? It's going back, and the Extractions on Netflix, these long one takes. Do you have a preferred style, or do you like the way that it's going again, where you're really seeing the actors having to get stuck in and stuff as well?
I'm enjoying the way action's going now, because I mean, it's paying homage to what was, and kind of bringing. Because we've got the new cameras now, we've got new technology and everything, so it's interesting to see. Because the thing is, like, back then, like, I say the cameras weren't as good, but in terms of, you could miss something, or, you know, you'll be in the middle of something, and it's so kind of, the quality wasn't there sometimes, so that cut or take might not be seen as much. But now, because you've got these like 4K cameras, like every little intricate thing is seen on screen. So if you're getting that amount of action that we had from back in the day with the technology that we're molding together now, you're getting the, like I said, the John Wicks, we get in, you know, the Gangs of London, and I think it's nice. It's almost like the old and new is coming together.
Yes.
And I think it's bringing us to a new, almost like a new era of fighting and like stunt choreography in films. But the only thing I feel is suffering a little bit these days is storytelling. But I guess, you know, ideas are hard. It's hard to come up with an original idea these days, because, you know, there is so much ideas and stuff out there now that's been done, and, you know, Disney and a couple of other things like to redo things and bring classics back, which is good because it brings a new generation to a classic film. But then it's kind of like we need the original scripts and the new technology, the new visual scenes that we get in. We need those to come back together to kind of take it to the next level. So that's that's hopefully the next couple of years we're going to see more of that coming in.
I think you're exactly right. I think what's happened is that technology has taken a massive step forward, and what was done back in the day for real, like with Jackie Chan, where it was legit one take, you now have the computer development that you can edit stuff together so it looks like one take, and the camera can be a lot more free roaming and stuff, so it looks like this camera's coming in and out of the action. And I just think storytelling has to catch up a little bit somewhat, but you're completely right. When you have the emotional resonance matched in with the visceral and you care about the people that are having the fights, it just hits a whole nother level. I completely agree. Like running onto a bunch of Gatling guns on horseback, just hoping that you're going to get one swipe of the sword in.
Well, that's what I feel like those two, like Matrix Reloaded and The Last Samurai, were good, because at the time it's like they met the quality of what they had then with the storytelling, so they had both. And I think that's what it's almost defined them as films for me. It's like they had that balance of amazing storytelling, amazing action, set pieces, cinematography. Like it just encompassed all of that. So yeah, I think once you start seeing the storytelling and everything else catch up with the technology we've got now, I think we're in for a treat.
One thing I do have to just ask before we finish up as well, what did you, because we've talked about the Matrix, so we've got to talk about Hens. How did you feel listen, if you haven't seen the 3 Matrixes by now, what can I tell you? Go and watch them. But like, what did you think about the ending of it? That, not the new one, like how it actually sort of ended for me when Neo sacrifices himself. Well, how did you feel about that?
See, that's the interesting one, because I know obviously everything that happened with that Trinity when, unfortunately, she bit the bullet. But
yeah,
when he sacrificed himself, and then you get the visual of almost like him plugged into the machines, where it's almost like wings, an angel. He looks like, and it's like it almost has that spiritual message to it. It's like he basically had to sacrifice himself for the greater good of man to, I guess, advance. And I think what was interesting to that was, I mean, for me, that's probably the only link that, for me, has the link to the fourth one, because his sacrifice almost at a point has allowed man and machine to live together.
Yes.
Because in the fourth one, they kind of touch on, like the machines are working with the humans a bit more and stuff like that. So I feel like that sacrifice ultimately gave them the ability to be able to do that. So yeah, I think the fourth one, it wasn't needed, but it kind of encompassed the ending of the third almost. So yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting take. I just really liked it. But yeah, I think going into the fourth one and realizing that they'd got both Trinity and Neo's broken bodies and had sort of rebuilt them back up, I was like, oh, it felt like the sacrifice. Is like, no, you can't. That was the only bit that really hurt me. I was like, oh, you can't do that. And they're still using them, They weren't ready to give the batteries up yet. Right, mate. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. And like I say, an absolute cracking 3 choices you made there. If people want to follow you, get in touch with you, is there anywhere where people can follow you and check your stuff out that you want to reveal, or do you just want to stay anonymous?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. My name's Kamara. It's like KAMARA_Kaizen. So that's KAIZEN. And again, that's a Japanese principle for continuous improvement. So that's what we're going with. And yes, same on all platforms: Twitter, YouTube. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll stick it all in the show notes and stuff as well. But like I say, mate, it's been absolute pleasure. Flew past, and thank you once again, because you allowed me to watch 2 films, and I'm probably going to go and check out The Last Samurai this afternoon as well. But it was a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much.
All right, you take care, man. It's good to speak to you. You take care. Yeah, see you soon.
See you. Bye now.